April 23, 2025. Delta State Governor Sheriff Oborevwori walked out of the PDP, the party that put him in office, and joined the ruling APC. He brought his predecessor with him. He brought his entire federal legislative delegation with him. Every single senator and House member from Delta State crossed in one coordinated movement. That was the starting gun. In the 13 months that followed, 11 governors abandoned opposition parties for the APC. 4 senators crossed in a single plenary session. 17 House members followed Peter Obi and Kwankwasem into a brand new party that did not even exist 12 months ago. And the opposition, which had gathered in Ibadan in April 2026 and signed a declaration committing to one unified presidential candidate against Tinubu, collapsed into 5 separate candidates within 30 days of signing it. While everyone is describing this as politics as usual, nobody is asking the question underneath all of it: is this a democratic realignment, or is Nigeria's multi-party system being systematically purchased? Before this video ends, I will show you the specific constitutional clause that makes every single one of these defections legally untouchable, and why the House of Representatives amendment passed in March 2026 does absolutely nothing to close it. Before we go further, if you are new here, Naija Brief exists for one reason: to give Nigerians the political analysis that mainstream media will not. Whether you are in Abuja, Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, or London, this channel is for you. Hit subscribe and stay with me. This gets much interesting. Let me give you the complete timeline, because the pattern matters more than any individual move. It starts in April 2025 with Delta. Governor Oborevwori and his entire political structure leave the PDP for the APC in what was, at the time, the single largest coordinated defection in the Fourth Republic. Critics called it a sinking ship abandonment. Oborevwori called it development-focused alignment. Whatever you call it, the message was received loudly by every other opposition governor watching. Then it accelerated. Governor Umar Eno of Akwa Ibom followed in June 2025, saying the decision came after extensive consultations. Governor Peter Mba of Enugu followed in October, calling Tinubu a partner in purpose. Also in October, Bayelsa's Doye Diri crossed over, citing the PDP's terminal decline. In December, Rivers State Governor Similaye Fubara joined the APC amid the political crisis in his state. Osun's Adeleke moved to the Accord Party rather than the APC, a survival maneuver that weakened the opposition without strengthening the ruling party. By the time January 2026 arrived, the PDP had gone from 11 governors to a handful, and it was not finished. Plateau's Caleb Mutfwang moved to the APC in early 2026. Then came the move that carried the heaviest symbolic weight. Kano Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf, the man who had been elected specifically on Rabiu Kwankwasi's NNPP platform, whose entire political identity was tied to the Kwankwasia movement, held a closed-door meeting with President Tinubu in the villa on January 20, 2026. 6 days later, he officially joined the APC. The man who gave Kwankwasi his seat walked away from him without a backward glance. Then, February 27, 2026, Adamawa Governor Amadu Fintiri, who had been the last credible PDP stronghold in the Northeast, the man whose name was being mentioned as a future national figure, picked up his APC membership card in Madagali local government area. He brought 22 commissioners and special advisors with him within days. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who is from Adamawa State, responded with a statement saying governors are defecting for personal survival, not because of the APC's appeal. That left the PDP with 4 governors in a country of 36 states. At the National Assembly, 4 PDP senators, Ikra Bilbis of Zamfara Central, Aminu Iya Abbas and Amos Yohannas of Adamawa, and Ipalibo Harin Banigo of Rivers West, announced their defections to the APC during plenary in March 2026, their letters read aloud on the Senate floor by Senate President Godswill Akpabio. And then, simultaneously, something moved in the opposite direction.
Former Bayelsa Governor Seriake Dickson had quietly founded the Nigerian Democratic Congress in February 2026. On May 4, Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso, the two men who together won over 6 million presidential votes in 2023, walked into Dickson's residence in Abuja on May 4 and formally joined the NDC. Within days, 17 House members and 3 senators followed them in. 2 streams running in opposite directions, and an INEC deadline that forced every politician in Nigeria to choose a lane or lose their shot at the 2027 ballot entirely. To understand how this is legally possible and why it keeps happening, you need to understand the constitutional architecture that was never designed to prevent it. There are 3 institutional layers to this defection wave, and each one tells you something different about where the system is broken. Layer 1. The constitutional permission structure. Section 68, sub 1G of the 1999 Constitution says that a member of the National Assembly vacates their seat if they join a different party from the one on which they were elected. That sounds like a clear prohibition on defection. It is not. Read the exception inside the same clause. A legislator does not vacate their seat if the defection results from a division in their original party. In practice, every political party in Nigeria can be described as internally divided at any given moment. There is not a single major party that does not have a faction dispute running somewhere. The internal crisis exception has been invoked so routinely and successfully challenged so rarely that it has functionally nullified the anti-defection rule entirely. For governors, the protection is even more explicit. There is no provision in the 1999 Constitution requiring a sitting governor to vacate office if he switches parties. The mandate belongs to the individual who won the election, not the party that sponsored them. This is the constitutional reality that allowed every single one of those 11 governors to remain in their chairs without any legal consequence after switching parties. Layer 2. The March 2026 House Amendment. On March 11, 2026, the House of Representatives passed an amendment to the Electoral Act that would criminalize dual political membership. Violators face a 10 million naira fine, up to 2 years in prison, or both. This sounds significant. It is not. The amendment targets dual membership, belonging to 2 parties at once. It does not prevent defection. A politician who formally resigns from one party before joining another faces 0 criminal exposure. What it might affect are behind-the-scenes arrangements where politicians maintain informal ties to multiple party structures. But prosecuting that requires evidence, intent, and a willing INEC. None of those are guaranteed. The amendment was passed by the same legislature whose members had been conducting mass defections for over a year. The optics of that should not be lost on anyone. The APC now controls 32 governors and over 90% of the National Assembly. But the APC is not a coherent party. It is a collection of former PDP governors, NNPP defectors, Labour Party deserters, and original APC members who hold fundamentally different political interests. 32 governors means 32 competing networks inside one party structure. The defection wave did not create a strong ruling party. It created a numerically dominant one, and those are 2 very different things. There are allegations about the financial architecture behind the governorship defection specifically, allegations involving 9-figure sums and coordination from inside the presidency. I will address those directly in Section 7, not as rumor, as a factual question that deserves a serious analytical answer. The institutions tell you what is permitted. Now let us talk about what each actor is actually trying to achieve and why the stated reasons and the real reasons are rarely the same sentence.
Tinubu's strategy, making 2027 structurally unwinnable for the opposition. Tinubu's political objective heading into 2027 is not simply to win the presidential election. It is to make the 2027 election structurally unwinnable for any credible opponent before a single vote is cast.
Think about what controlling 32 governorships actually means in practice. State governors control the grassroots mobilization machinery. They control local government chairmen who run the ward-level operations. They have direct influence over how INEC offices in their states are managed on election day. A presidential candidate who faces 32 opposing governors cannot match that infrastructure. The election is decided at the ward level, and the ward level belongs to whoever the governor aligns with. The presidency has firmly denied the financial inducement allegations. But what is not in dispute is the structural logic that produces the same outcome without a single naira changing hands. Nigeria's fiscal federalism concentrates federal allocation, federal infrastructure projects, and federal security resources at the center. Governors who align with the ruling party gain access to what the center controls. Governors who resist lose it. That is not a theory. That is the architecture of the Nigerian state. The defecting governors, the survival calculation. Listen to the language each defecting governor used to justify their move. Oborewori said aligning with the center ensures development. Fintili said he wanted to leverage the renewed hope agenda for Adamawa. Umo Eno said extensive consultations led to the decision. Peter Mba called Tinubu a partner in purpose. Every single justification is framed as service delivery. Not one governor said, "I am moving because my party no longer has the capacity to protect me." But that is exactly what Atiku Abubakar said about them. In his statement responding to Fintili's defection, Atiku said governors are moving for personal survival, not because the APC is performing. And Atiku, whatever his own political interests, is the person in this story who has been inside this system the longest. When he diagnoses personal survival as the primary driver, that deserves to be taken seriously. The Ibadan Declaration, the coalition that collapsed in 30 days. On April 25, 2026, something remarkable happened. Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, Rabiu Kwankwaso, Rotimi Amechi, Seyi Makinde and leaders from 14 opposition parties sat together in Ibadan at a summit chaired by former President Olusegun Obasanjo. They signed the Ibadan Declaration, a commitment to field one unified presidential candidate against Tinubu in 2027, the most ambitious opposition coalition in over a decade. It lasted less than 30 days. Within a week of the summit, Obi and Kwankwaso announced they were leaving the ADC, the coalition's agreed platform, citing endless court cases, internal battles, suspicion and division. They joined the NDC instead. 17 House members and 3 senators followed them. The Ibadan Declaration was dead before the ink was dry. By the first week of June 2026, what had been presented as a grand unified opposition had fractured into 5 separate presidential candidates: Atiku on the ADC, Obi on the NDC, Seyi Makinde on the Allied People's Movement, Goodluck Jonathan on a factional PDP ticket, and a Labour Party candidate. 5 candidates, 1 ruling party. That is the gift the opposition gave Tinubu by signing a declaration and then immediately ignoring it. The NDC, real threat or organized hope?
The NDC deserves serious analysis, not dismissal. Obi and Kwankwaso together produced over 6 million votes in 2023, with no governors, no federal machinery, and no incumbency advantages. The NDC has already zoned its 2027 presidential ticket to southern Nigeria for a single 4-year term, a calculated move to position Obi without the rotation debate becoming a distraction. Kwankwaso has publicly confirmed he supports Obi as the candidate. The question is whether the obedient movement's energy, concentrated in the southeast, Lagos, and the diaspora, combined with the Kwankwasiya's northwest base, can replicate the 2023 geographic spread under a new party brand without the Labour Party's existing state structures. That is a significant operational challenge, but it is not an impossible one. And this time, the 2 men are on the same ticket rather than competing against each other. Now, if what I just told you surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know your reaction before we get to the part that changes everything. Federalism without opposition. Nigeria's 1999 constitution was designed around a federal system where state governments check federal power. 32 APC governors do not check federal power. They are an extension of it. The document says federal. The reality, right now, is closer to a single administrative hierarchy running from Aso Rock to 32 state capitals. When the executive, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and 32 of 36 state governments are under the same political leadership, the separation of powers that is supposed to prevent abuse has effectively collapsed into voluntary cooperation. The economic cost nobody is counting. Every defection cycle has a development cost that gets absorbed by ordinary Nigerians. When a governor switches parties, contracts are reviewed. Political appointments change. Development priorities reset based on who is now owed political loyalty, not which community has the most urgent need. In states where governors defected mid-term, infrastructure projects tied to the previous political structure were often paused or abandoned entirely as the new alignment was consolidated. SERAP formally called in May 2026 for an INEC investigation into allegations that 800 billion naira FAAC allocations may have been diverted by APC governors for political and campaign purposes. If any portion of that allegation is accurate, it means the defection wave has a direct cost that is being paid in schools without equipment and hospitals without drugs. The ethnic and security dimension. The defection pattern has not been ethnically uniform. The Southeast remains the least APC-penetrated zone at the gubernatorial level. The Northwest and Northeast are now almost entirely APC. The South-South is contested, and in states that face active security threats, in the Northwest, the Middle Belt, the calculation that federal security resources follow political alignment is not abstract. It is a life and death consideration for communities making decisions about their governors.
Nigeria is not operating in an international vacuum. The US and UK governments have shifted their language on Nigeria from cautionary observation to active concern about democratic backsliding. In late 2025, a coalition called Nigeria Unite formally wrote to the US Senate calling for targeted sanctions against specific Nigerian officials, alleging that opposition parties were being deliberately weakened through state-backed intimidation and resource depredation. For the Nigerian diaspora in London, Houston, Calgary, and Atlanta, communities that collectively remit over $26 billion annually, this is not an abstract political story. The governance environment their remittances land in has been fundamentally reshaped by these defections. Development priorities, contract relationships, and security arrangements in their home states have all shifted. The money goes to the same address. The political reality it encounters is completely different. Political scientists call what is happening here dominant party consolidation. It has been documented in Hungary, in Turkey, in parts of East Africa. Formal elections continue, but the competitive space is steadily narrowed through legal changes, resource asymmetry, and institutional capture until the outcome is structurally predetermined. Nigeria is not Hungary, but the mechanism is recognizable. The strongest case for the defectors. Here is the most honest version of the pro-defection argument. Tinubu is the constitutionally elected president. The APC has a legitimate mandate. In any functioning federation, aligning with the federal government is rational governance, not corruption. A governor who refuses to align with Abuja cannot access federal road funding at speed, cannot get priority intervention for security crises, and cannot protect their constituents from being marginalized in the allocation of national infrastructure. These governors are not betraying their voters. They are making the pragmatic calculation that you cannot serve anyone from a position of deliberate federal isolation. Nasarawa Governor Abdullahi Sule said Tinubu has taken the bullets on difficult economic reforms so others could benefit. That is a real political argument, not a manufactured one. Now, the dismantling. The problem with this argument is that it accepts the condition it should be contesting. A federal system that withholds roads, security resources, and infrastructure from states governed by opposition parties is not a federation. It is a patronage state wearing a federal costume. Defending defection as a rational response to that reality is accurate, but the rational response to coercion is not compliance. It is to name the coercion and demand that it stop. On the financial inducement allegations, Sahara reporters published claims in November 2025 that each defecting governor received a total package of 250 billion naira, structured in 2 tranches. Senators allegedly received 1 billion naira, House members 500 million naira. The presidency denied all of it. Every defector denied it. These claims remain unverified and cannot be stated as fact. But the structural incentives of controlling 20 trillion naira in annual federal expenditure are sufficient to produce exactly the defection pattern we have observed without a single naira of additional inducement being necessary. That is the honest answer. The most dangerous misconception in the public conversation is that this defection wave proves Tinubu is popular. It proves nothing of the sort. It proves that Nigerian politicians respond rationally to the incentive structures they operate inside. A politician who can access contracts, return tickets, and federal security by switching parties, and who faces zero legal consequence for switching, will switch. That is not a statement about Tinubu's performance. It is a statement about what Nigerian system rewards. The two things are not the same.
The 3 most likely next moves. First, the APC will fracture internally during its 2027 primary season. 32 governors means 32 competing power networks inside one party tent. Former PDP governors bring their own patronage structures. Former NNPP members from Kano are politically distant from former Labour members from Enugu. The NWC will face unprecedented pressure allocating governorship and senatorial return tickets among new entrants who each believe they paid an entry price for that ticket. Watch the APC primaries. The loudness of the internal complaints will tell you more about the party's real cohesion than any official statement. Second, the NDC's survival as a serious presidential force depends entirely on whether the Obi-Kwankwaso ticket can expand beyond its existing geographic base. The 2023 pattern was strong in the southeast, Lagos, and Abuja, with insufficient penetration in the northwest despite Kwankwaso's presence. This time, Kwankwaso is not competing against Obi, he is campaigning for him. Whether the Kwankwasia machinery in Kano can actually deliver mass votes for an Igbo Christian presidential candidate is the most important unanswered question in the 2027 race. Watch INEC. The Ibadan Declaration called for the removal of INEC chairman Professor Joash Amupitan, accusing him of blatant partisanship. Serap has filed a formal petition calling for investigation of the 800 billion naira FAAC diversion allegation. These are live institutional disputes that will directly shape the 2027 electoral environment. If INEC responds to neither with credible action, the election itself becomes harder to trust regardless of who wins it. The constitutional loophole. Section 68(1)(g) prohibits legislators from defecting without vacating their seat unless there is a division in their original party. Every legislative defection in this wave used that exception. The March 2026 House amendment targets dual membership, a separate behavior. It does not close Section 68. Closing Section 68 requires a constitutional amendment which requires 2/3 majorities in both chambers of the National Assembly and ratification by at least 24 state houses of assembly. The same political class that benefits from the loophole would need to vote to seal it. That is not happening before 2027. The defection door remains wide open. The financial allegation. Saharan reporters published in November 2025 that each defecting governor received 250 billion naira, 100 billion naira upfront, 150 billion naira after the formal ceremony.
Senators allegedly got 1 billion naira each, House members 500 billion naira. The presidency denied everything. No defector confirmed it. The claims are unverified. But consider this. The APC government spends over 20 trillion naira annually. It controls which states get federal roads, which communities get security deployments, and which contractors get federal project awards. In a system where those decisions follow political loyalty, the structural incentive to defect may already be sufficient to explain the entire wave without any additional financial package being necessary at all. The allegation matters, but so does the system that makes the allegation plausible.
We began with a question. Is this a democratic realignment, or is Nigeria's multi-party system being systematically purchased? The honest answer is that the question is not quite right, because you do not need to purchase a system that rewards compliance and punishes resistance automatically. You do not need to pay anyone if the architecture of the state already makes alignment profitable and opposition costly. The defections are rational. That is not a defense of them. Rational responses to broken incentive structures are still responses to broken incentive structures. The right question is not why politicians are defecting. The right question is why a democratic system was designed in a way that makes defection the rational choice. The voter in Delta who chose the PDP in 2023 did not vote for Tinubu's party. The voter in Adamawa who elected Fintiri did not vote for a switch to the APC. The voter in Kano who sent Abba Yusuf to Government House on an NNPP platform did not cast that ballot for the broom. Those votes were cast, those mandates were transferred without a single by-election, without a single recall, without any democratic process at all. What Nigerians should demand is this: a constitutional amendment that closes the Section 68 loophole without ambiguity, an INEC that enforces its rules without political favor, and a civil society prepared to treat every defection as a democratic event requiring accountability, not just a political event requiring commentary. The 2027 election will not be won on the campaign trail. It will be won or lost in the institutional decisions being made right now. Pay attention to those decisions. They are the real ballot. If this analysis gave you clarity, share it with one person who needs to understand what is really happening in Nigeria. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the